Statement, Secretary of State Steve Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for granting the statement. Mr. Speaker, when we each enter this chamber, we carry on one shoulder the duty to represent our constituents, and on the other, the responsibility to protect this democracy. The case of the former MEP Nathan Gill has revealed the threat our democracy faces today, and I know it has caused deep concern right across the House. On Friday, the 21st of November 2025, Mr. Gill was sentenced to 10.5 years in prison for accepting bribes linked to the Russian state and attempting to advance that state's twisted interests. This is the longest sentence handed down to a politician in a case like this in our nation's recent history. While we must commend the work of the police and the Crown Prosecution Service in successfully prosecuting this case, it is right that we now take a step back to look at how we can protect our democracy against such appalling crimes. And Mr. Speaker, let me be clear about what this crime was. An elected politician took bribes to parrot the lies of a hostile state responsible for the death of Dawn Sturgis, a British citizen on British soil. He took the side of those responsible for invading a sovereign European state. And he was prosecuted while Putin's military targeted the civilian men, women and children of Ukraine. At the time, he sat as a member of the European Parliament, supposedly representing the British people, and went on to become a senior leader of a UK political party. Mr. Speaker, we must learn the lessons so this can never happen again. Following discussions with ministerial colleagues, I have today ordered an independent review into foreign financial interference in UK politics. This will be led by the former Permanent Secretary Philip Rycroft, reporting both to me as Secretary of State responsible for elections and to the Minister of State for Security as the Chair of the Defending Democracy Task Force. The facts are clear. A British politician took bribes to further the interests of the Russian regime, a regime which forcefully deported vulnerable Ukrainian children and killed a British citizen on British soil using a deadly nerve agent. This conduct is a stain on our democracy. The independent review will work to remove that stain. The purpose of the review is to provide an in-depth assessment of the current financial rules and safeguards and make recommendations. I will deposit a full copy of the terms of reference in the House of Commons library. I have asked Philip Rycroft to report back by the end of March, when I will return to this House to set out his findings and the government's response. It is right that the review is independent of government and independent of any political party. It's also important I make clear to the House that investigating crimes and examining broader allegations of wrongdoing remains the responsibility of the Electoral Commission and the police, not this review. Individual members should continue to refer to the current National Protective Security Authority guidance and speak to the parliamentary security authorities if they have any specific concerns. The findings of the independent review will build on both the government's election strategy and counter political interference and espionage action plan, and inform the Elections and Democracy Bill that we will bring forward next year. We published our strategy for modern and secure elections earlier this year. This will close loopholes that should have been closed long before we entered office. It will strengthen existing rules on donations, which mean only legitimate donors can support legitimate campaigns. And it will clamp down on the free rein shell companies and unincorporated associations currently have to make donations without first undergoing proper checks. However, Mr. Speaker, in the time since that strategy was published, events have shown that we need to consider whether our firewall is enough. The independent review will look at this, focusing in particular on the effectiveness of our broader political finance laws, on current checks and balances within political regulation for identifying and mitigating foreign interference, on safeguards against illicit funding streams, including cryptocurrencies, and on the rules governing the constitution and regulation of parties and the Electoral Commission's enforcement power. It is right that the review looks at these critical issues in depth, and I stand ready to do whatever is necessary to protect British democracy from foreign and hostile interference. Mr. Speaker, I mentioned earlier the weight of responsibility we should each feel in this House. Those who seek to disrupt or attack the foundations of our democracy will never prevail. Britain will always be a democracy because the people of this country will never have it any other way, and because the choices of the British people will always be the guiding star for our nation. I want to thank all honourable members who have come to the Chamber today. I am highlighting the threat of foreign interference because the first responsibility of His Majesty's government is to keep our people safe. Our ability to protect this nation and its values is always stronger when this Parliament presents a united front. So I hope members right across the Chamber will offer their support for the independent review. And Mr. Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Minister Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I firstly thank the Secretary of State in advance for advance sight of his statement, and let me begin by saying that protecting the integrity of our democratic system from foreign interference is not a partisan issue. It goes to the heart of public trust in our elections. Interference in our elections from foreign actors is something that we must all be vigilant against, and I concur fully with what the Secretary of State has said about Nathan Gill and join him in his sincere thanks to the CPS and the police. Any crime such as this deserves full condemnation from all members of this House. Mr. Speaker, the government announced its election strategy back in July, a strategy which affects all of us in this House. However, there was no consultation of political parties before the strategy was released. There's also been no formal consultation since it was announced. December marks the first time that the government has engaged with the Parliamentary Parties panel. We do, however, welcome the announced independent review led by Philip Rycroft and wish him well in his work going forward. Will the Minister commit to all parties being consulted on the new independent review during its work? And does the Minister accept the long-standing convention that government should not unilaterally impose changes to the law affecting political parties as parties without proper consultation and cross-party engagement? On electoral resilience, last week the Speaker's Committee on the Electoral Commission noted that the Commission was not consulted at all on the cancellation of the 2026 mayoral elections. So will he update us on whether council elections are going ahead or not, or will he cancel more at the last minute, and will he give electoral officials plenty of notice whatever he chooses to do? Now delving into the government statement. The government has signalled its intention to introduce Know Your Customer-style checks on political donations, yet political parties are not banks or the taxman. During the passage of the National Security Bill, the last government committed to look at greater information sharing powers between relevant agencies and with political parties, precisely to identify irregular sources. Does the Secretary of State agree that such information sharing would help political parties meet these new duties? I welcome the Secretary of State's announcement on cryptocurrencies and the clarity that this will bring in scope of the independent review. The Secretary of State is absolutely right to mention Russia. The last government legislated for a foreign influence registration scheme to stop covert foreign influence. Can the Minister explain why the government has repeatedly refused to extend this scheme to China? What reasons are there for leaving such a gap in our national security framework? And will China be included within the scope of the independent review? Unfortunately, this decision sits uneasy alongside the government ramming through the planning application for the Chinese embassy. How is this meant to convince members of this House that the government is taking foreign interference seriously from all malign powers across the globe? Madam Deputy Speaker, there are clear loopholes that this government needs to address. Currently, there are loopholes created by the Scottish and Welsh governments that allow Chinese residents in Scotland and Wales to make donations to UK political parties and politicians. Can I ask what steps the government are taking to close these loopholes and ensure that safeguarding is consistent throughout the whole of the United Kingdom? Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, protecting our democracy requires transparent cross-party discussion. Centralised power that bends its knees to the Chinese does not have the United Kingdom's national interests as a priority. The Secretary of State has an opportunity now to set the record straight and reassure the House of this government's commitment to take foreign interference from every malign influencer seriously. I do hope the concerns I've outlined are directly addressed here today.
Secretary of State.
Well, first of all, can I warmly welcome his support for this review? I agree with him. This is way above party politics. This matters to all of us. It's about the integrity and the safety of our democracy and about making sure that the safeguards we have in place to protect those precious things are sufficiently robust. Regarding the election strategy and the bill that will be brought forward in the new year, then we will of course be engaging with parties over aspects of that bill before it is brought forward to the House. He asked about the elections that are scheduled to go ahead. They will be going ahead. He asks about cryptocurrency. That will be in scope for the review, and I expect the independent reviewer to take a view on that matter. It's been raised on all sides of the House previously, but I'm sure he and other members of his party will want to make their views clear to the reviewer as he comes to his conclusions. Again, the review is fully independent, but I would expect China to be fully in scope because of the questions that have been raised about the threats that China poses to national security, well documented. And regarding the devolved administrations, we will be engaging with them over the applications of the findings of the independent review to competencies that are within their scope relating to elections.
Chair of the Select Committee, Florence Eshelamy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for making his statement today. I think for far too often, for members right across this House, sometimes we do take elections for granted. The fact that we can go to the ballot box and cast our votes in a free and fair election is something that we have to fight and we have to make sure we protect. So I do welcome the fact that we are looking into this investigation, particularly the angle of strengthening foreign donations. It cannot be right that political parties can raise millions of pounds in cryptocurrency and that will go unchecked in terms of looking at where the source of that funding. So I welcome that review into the illicit funding, making sure we can trace the source of that funding coming into our political donations. I also welcome the appointment of Sir Philip Rycroft, and I hope to go through the terms of reference which the Secretary of State outlined will be published later. In terms of welcoming this announcement, it's important that we do look at the fact that democracy is under attack and we need to make sure that accountability and independence stays in check. The strategy and policy statement introduced by the previous Conservative government was a step in the wrong direction, giving politicians undue influence over the Electoral Commission. Can I ask the Secretary of State if he will confirm that the strategy and policy statement will be abolished in the upcoming elections bill, and if the independence of the electoral commissions will be protected in future?
Secretary of State.
I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for her support for the review, and I look forward to the Select Committee making their views clear to Philip Rycroft and his team. I agree with her concerns over the problematic nature of cryptocurrency and the anonymity of the donors. It's important that there is transparency for where that money comes from, so we see who may be seeking to influence British politics and British democracy, particularly if they are malign, hostile, foreign or state actors. She asked a question about the elections bill. That will be published in the new year, and the details will be very clear to her then.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Zoe Franklin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Firstly, I thank the Secretary of State for advance notice of the content of his statement. The Liberal Democrats welcome the statement and the decision to establish an independent review. This is a serious issue that clearly demands action, and we'll be following the review very closely. Public trust in politics is at a dangerously low level. Polling consistently shows only 9 to 12% of the public trust politicians, and this is something that every member of this House should be seriously worried about. Restoring trust must begin with integrity and transparency. People need confidence that the information shaping our political debate is accurate. Trust also relies on fairness. Every vote must count equally, and that requires a fair and credible electoral system. But finally, and most relevantly today, trust depends on transparency in political finance. Voters should know who funds our politics and trust that wealthy individuals, corporations or foreign interests cannot buy influence or access. With that in mind, will the government accept that a small number of extremely wealthy individuals now wield disproportionate influence over British politics? That includes overseas donors, which raises very serious questions around foreign interference. And at a recent Westminster Hall debate, members from across this House spoke out strongly on this matter. And finally, will the Secretary of State now commit to donation caps, something supported by voters across every major party? Thank you.
State.
Can I welcome the support from the Honourable Lady for the review? We've now had that support from all sides of the House, and I think that is appreciated. It's very important that the House of Commons stands united against the potential threats to our democracy from hostile foreign state actors. Our democracy is one of the most precious things we have, and it's important we all work together across the chamber to protect it. We are not targeting any particular states or individuals with this review. We are looking to confirm that the safeguards that protect our democracy from inappropriate or malign foreign financial interference are robust enough, and I look forward to Philip Rycroft's findings when we have them towards the end of March.
Sean Woodcock.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend will be aware that the honourable member for Boston and Skegness recently failed to declare on time hospitality in a French villa from the wife of the former Russian Deputy Finance Minister. Can my right honourable friend assure me that the offer and acceptance of gifts and free holidays from Russian oligarchs will be in the scope of this review?
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question, and can I just preface my response by saying that the review is not looking at individual cases, but the broader issue of gifts and hospitality and how they may be used by malign or potentially malign foreign agents or state actors will be in scope for the independent review.
Sir Julian Lewis.
I hope the Rycroft review will take account of the fact that the giving of money is by no means the worst aspect or the main aspect of treacherous behaviour, because very often these people do what they do out of a genuine belief in a potential enemy's point of view, and it would be interesting to know whether the crime would have attracted such a large sentence as it did if, instead of just money being given, it had been a matter of clandestine contact because the person was willing to spout the Russian line anyway. So let us not be over-concerned with the giving of the bribery, which is often a bonus to people who want to betray us to a potential enemy in any case.
Secretary of State.
Well, I thank him for his question. He makes a very important point, and indeed the Security Minister, who's sitting alongside me, is leading the Defending Democracy Task Force that will be taking a wider view of the threats to our democracy. As they evolve, then so too must our safeguards evolve to keep our democracy safe. Philip Rycroft's review will be focusing on malign foreign financial interference, given that we know from the Nathan Gill case that there may be weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and we want to make sure that our safeguards are as robust as they can possibly be.
Before I call the next member, can I just remind members that if they are going to seek to make a complaint about non-declaration of interest or the breaking of rules or conduct by another member, that would be an issue better raised with the Standards Commissioner than with the Secretary of State today. Equally, if they're going to refer to the conduct of another member, they should have informed them in advance. Andrew Cooper. Jeez, the honourable gentleman wasn't bobbing. Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome my honourable friend's statement today and thank him for mentioning the forcible deportation of Ukrainian children by Russia. I recently coordinated a cross-party letter to the Minister of State ensuring that the human rights of those children were protected in peace negotiations. Does he share my concern that whilst that letter was supported by almost every party across this House, there was not a single representative from one party who sought to sign it, and that party was the Reform Party?
Well, I do commend and congratulate her on her campaigning for the kidnapped children of Ukraine, and you would really expect that representatives of all political parties would seek to support their interests in being returned back home to their parents and to their carers. Perhaps most shocking of all is that despite the widespread knowledge that that was going on, this individual chose to accept bribes from the government of Russia, responsible for those heinous activities, betraying his country into the bargain.
Woodley.
I'm curious to know in what respect our existing laws were insufficient to deal with this appalling case. And would he confirm that the best way to reassure the public on electoral resilience is never again to delay local council or mayoral elections?
Secretary of State.
Well, I'm curious to know exactly the same thing, which is why I've appointed Philip Rycroft to lead an independent review so that we can find out.
Justin Madders.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this review and the fact that it is independent. It's really important this is seen to be above party politics because we must protect our democracy. It's very clear that it's fragile and it's under attack from foreign forces. But I just want to ask the Secretary of State about the terms of reference and whether this will involve looking at the role of social media companies, because there's no doubt that foreign state actors are absolutely using that as a vehicle to spread disinformation and undermine our democracy.
Secretary of State.
Well, it's an independent review, and the reviewer and his team will be able to look at whatever they think may be problematic relating to the core terms of reference. But the central part of those terms of reference are to focus on the potential malign foreign financial interference in UK politics. That may or may not have a bearing on the point that he raises.
Will Forster.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State is right to highlight the appalling case of a senior UK politician being convicted of bribery from taking money from Russia. I'm also concerned of a UK political party getting a donation, the largest single donation from a living person, from money abroad, from cryptocurrency. Can he assure me this independent review, which I welcome, will consider political donations and will potentially recommend where we set a political donation cap?
Secretary of State.
Well, he's absolutely right to raise concerns about cryptocurrency. There's no way of knowing for certain what the origins of that financing might be. And it does appear to be potentially a backdoor for malign foreign actors or states to seek to influence British democracy, and we can't allow that. It will be up to the independent reviewer to choose where he wishes to go with the investigation, but I'm sure he and other members of his party will make clear the points that he's just made in the House and that they will be fully considered.
Clive Betts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to follow up on the question raised by my honourable friend for Ellesmere Port about social media. I do think this is really important, and I'd put it this way to the Secretary of State. If a foreign government funds third parties to post false comments on social media to mislead people exercising their democratic rights, surely that must come within the terms of the Rycroft Review. Could he confirm that that's up to Philip Rycroft and he has the capacity to bring it within terms of the review, given that particular issue?
Secretary of State.
Yes, that's correct. What he just described is foreign financial attempts to influence our democracy, and that will be in scope for the review.
Simon Hall.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as a former Elections Minister, can I welcome the Secretary of State's statement? And I wondered if he would reflect on 2 points together with his right honourable friend with regards to the Defending Democracy Task Force. The Electoral Commission has plenty of influence, possibly needs more financial resource and sharper teeth that it can deploy more quickly. Would he reflect on that and ask Sir Philip to advise on that point? And the response of our police across the country is at best patchy when it comes to their interpretation of how they define their key and pivotal role in defending democracy and ensuring that it works fairly and well for all of us. So through the task force, can he ensure that there's a more uniform approach from the police on this issue?
State.
Yes, I welcome his intervention. He makes very important observations. The role, resources and powers of the Electoral Commission will be in scope for the review, as will the role and enforcement powers of other agencies, including the police, if the reviewer sees fit to pursue that.
Matt Weston.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Chair of the Joint Committee on National Security Strategy, I welcome the Secretary of State's statement into the case of Nathan Gill. There's nothing worse than the enemy within. It's quite clear that there are significant loopholes with the current system. Money is flooding in. In fact, we have taken evidence about cryptocurrencies on our committee as part of our Defending Democracy inquiry. Just interested to hear from the Minister about when the terms of reference will be published. Just to echo the points about media ownership and also social media, as has been commented on. But also just if the Secretary of State would appear before the JCNSS when we hold our inquiry in January and February.
State.
I'm always happy to receive invitations to appear before inquiries of that level of importance. The terms of reference will be laid in the House of Commons library today, may indeed already have been done so, and I refer to my comments earlier on social media.
Kirsty Blackman.
Much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In terms of looking at the political finances, we are supportive of the review, and I thank the Secretary of State for bringing it to us today. The donations that are made to political parties are one thing, but donations that are made to either candidates or politicians are another thing, and it can be considered slightly differently. Would the Secretary of State confirm that this will be part of Rycroft's review, and that we will be looking specifically at donations that are outside that normal electoral cycle to main political parties?
State.
Well, first of all, can I welcome the Honourable Lady's support for the review. The circumstances she describes will be in scope. We need to be looking across the piece to ensure that the safeguards we have in place against foreign influence on our democracy are robust at all levels and all tiers and all elections.
Alan Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would the Secretary of State agree with me that this absolutely appalling case of a senior Reform politician being jailed for accepting Russian bribes shows that the corrupt Putin regime is not only cyber-attacking our national infrastructure, is not only interfering with our critical infrastructure under the sea with its shadow fleet, but is trying to attack the very heart of our democracy itself?
Yes.
So can the Secretary of State explain to the House how, when this review is concluded, the full powers and resources that might be recommended for the police, the security services and the other agencies that can protect our democracy will be provided?
State.
Well, I will be responding directly to the findings of the Commission when those are available at the end of March, and I will bring those responses back to the House of Commons. But I do agree with the point that he's making. The Russian dictatorship is clearly using malign information activity at scale to threaten the national security and integrity of democracies across the advanced democratic world, including here in the UK. And we need to understand, as the threat evolves, that our safeguards are evolving similarly to keep our democracy safe.
Mark Pritchard.
Can I welcome the Rycroft review? The Secretary of State in an earlier reply said that the role of the Electoral Commission will be in scope, and I think if that is the case, it does need involvement from opposition parties from across the House, which I think earlier in his statement he said that probably wouldn't happen. Whether it happens in the task force or perhaps more widely in the Defending Democracy task force, given that this case that he refers to, this shocking case, started off in the European Parliament, can I invite him and his ministerial colleagues to look at the role of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, the Parliamentary Assembly on the Council of Europe, and the NATO Parliamentary Assembly? I believe I'm the only MP in history to have served on all three, not at the same time, I hasten to add. And of course the UK-EU Parliamentary Partnership Assembly. All of those, I believe, in my experience, have been subject to at least very low-level Belarus or Russian influence operations.
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question, not least because it gives me the opportunity to correct any misimpression. But the independent review will be engaging cross-party right across the House and will be hoping, indeed expecting to hear from all parties, members of all parties who have a view to share, because I am convinced that all of us in all parties want to ensure that we can defend our democracy against malign foreign interference, whether that is from Russia or from anywhere else.
Rosie Writing.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank the Secretary of State for coming here and sending a clear message that attacks on our democracy will not win. This government won't let it happen, and the British people won't let it happen. My right honourable friend might be aware that the BBC sought to question the former leader of UKIP in Scotland, who also made pro-Russian interventions in the European Parliament at the same time as Gill, and he refused to answer their questions. So with that in mind, my right honourable friend assure me that this review will have the resources they need to leave no stone unturned when examining Russian interference in our political system.
State.
Thank you for her question, and I agree with her. Our democracy is one of the most precious things we have in our country, and we all need to do absolutely everything in our power to protect it. The resources will be made available to the independent review coming from my departmental budgets. We will hear from the reviewer himself exactly how he sees the review moving forward, and I will make sure that it has appropriate resourcing to carry out the functions that the House of Commons is asking of it.
Callum Miller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Members from across this House expressed their deep concerns on this issue in the backbench committee debate led by my Liberal Democrat colleague, the member for Lewis, on foreign influence last Thursday. So I am very glad that the government has taken this step today. There is clear evidence that other leaders of UKIP and Reform UK also associated with Nathan Gill's Russian handlers. There is also evidence, laid out, albeit in redacted form, in the Russia report of the Intelligence and Security Committee of Russian money seeking to influence other parties and elections. So can the Secretary of State confirm that the review will be free to look back as far as it needs to inform its recommendations, including the referendums of 2014 and 2016, and that it will be free to publish its findings without ministerial censorship?
Secretary of State.
Well, the review will certainly have the freedom to be fully independent, because that is important if we're to have confidence in the findings, but it will be forward-looking. There will be no relitigating of previous elections, although we know, not least from the Nathan Gill case, that there have been attempts by malign foreign actors to interfere in British democracy. There have been no findings that the outcomes of any elections to date were affected by malign foreign interference. The point of this review is to ensure that moving forwards, we maintain safeguards robust enough to protect future elections from malign foreign interference.
Daniel Francis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to echo the comments from colleagues regarding social media sites. In Bexleyheath and Crayford, we've seen more and more examples of anonymous users on Facebook particularly spreading disinformation, not just at election time, but also to undermine trust and faith in public bodies outside of election time. So as well as the review, can I ask the Secretary of State to give us assurances about how we can continue to work with colleagues across government to look at those issues and how foreign interference is playing its part in it?
Well, he speaks to a very real threat, not just to our democracy, but to our national security. From foreign financial interference. You know, we're all aware of so-called bots and the role that they seek to play in influencing the views of electors in elections. That is a function of foreign financial interference, and it will be in scope for the review.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The irony of hearing the Secretary of State talk about protecting democracy a week after cancelling mayoral elections will not be lost on millions of British voters. But nevertheless, we welcome this review, of course. And can the Secretary of State confirm? Can the Secretary of State confirm that it will also cover the influence of the Chinese communist regime into the Labour Party, where a senior MP allegedly received hundreds of thousands of pounds of donations from a potential Chinese spy? A Labour government that gave away our valuable strategic Chagos Islands. A Labour government that was responsible for the Chinese spy case collapse. And a Labour government that is kowtowing to China over the mega embassy.
Well, the leader of Reform UK, when asked to conduct an internal review into the Gill matter, of course refused to carry one out. But he did say, to give him credit, that he would welcome a review by the government into these matters. So I was disappointed that the honourable gentleman didn't welcome the review that we're discussing in the House today. All, just to be clear, all potential sources of malign foreign financial interference are in scope for this review. And if the review finds failings in any political party, then I expect the leaders of other political parties, as of my own leader, to put the country first and their party second.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's comments on social media, and I hope that we can meet with the Elections Minister ahead of the publications of the bill to see what we can do for those protections. I wanted to raise, particularly in this review that he's announced today, which is a very, very good one, the money that is coming into this country, particularly around changing our politics around abortion rights, trans rights, and other areas. Is that within scope of the review?
Thank you for a question, and I'm sure my colleague, the Elections Minister, would be delighted to meet with her to discuss her concerns. The review will be looking at any foreign financial interference in our democracy, so I would expect the point she raises to be in scope.
Lisa Smart.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome the Secretary of State's statement today on the establishment of the independent review, and I also agree with colleagues across the House who've talked about the importance of the resilience of our democracy, but also its current fragility. I note that the Secretary of State doesn't seem keen to give us too many spoilers of what to expect in the elections bill in the new year, but I want to follow on from my colleague on the Speaker's Committee on the Electoral Commission, the Chair of the Select Committee, and my honourable friend, the member for Guildford's questions, just to see if the Secretary of State would confirm whether, if the review recommends a cap on donations, or if the review recommends restoring the independence of the Electoral Commission, would they be things he'd support?
I thank her for her question. We certainly understand the risks posed to elections, and in the elections bill, as we published in the strategy in July, we will seek to strengthen the rules around donations to political parties for that reason. The findings of the independent review will inform what is in the elections bill.
Terry Jeremy.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the statement and the leadership that the Secretary of State is showing on this issue. Our democracy is important and requires our active protection. But does the Secretary of State agree with me, as well as the actions the government can take, there is still far more that individual political parties, particularly Reform UK, can do around due diligence and vetting procedures to stop people being elected, because we continue to see too many people up and down the country, once they're into office, horror stories coming out that should have been stopped in advance.
State.
Well, I certainly agree with the points he's making about due diligence, and one of the issues we'll be looking at as a government, no secret this, but we need to look at standards in public life. The Prime Minister has already made some changes in the code of conduct that affects all of us as members of Parliament, but I think that we need to look further at how we can strengthen standards across local government as well, which were weakened, unfortunately, by the previous government.
Anne Davies.
Following the sentencing of the former Reform Wales leader for taking bribes to peddle pro-Russian propaganda, we welcome this review. Thank you. But Plaid Cymru, as you remember from Liz Saville-Roberts' PMQ, has been calling for... Sorry.
The Honourable Lady will know that we don't refer to other honourable members by name but by their constituency. Anne Davies.
I apologise. But Plaid Cymru has been calling for action in Westminster and the Senedd for months, only to be repeatedly dismissed by this Labour government, which even left it to Reform's own leader to police his party. Unfortunately, because of the government's delay, there is now no time to implement reforms before the 2026 Senedd elections. Will the Minister set out exactly what steps are being taken to protect Welsh democracy from foreign interference before next year?
Secretary of State.
Thank you for a question. I mean, safeguards are already in place, of course, but the fact that the review will report in March means it will come ahead of the elections, and that is because not only members of this House, but voters across the country will want to know that the safeguards against malign foreign financial interference into the coming elections are sufficiently robust to make sure that they are free and they are fair.
Alex Sobel.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Chair of the Fair Election APG, I warmly welcome this independent review into foreign financial interference in UK politics. Foreign financial interference, however, is not the only threat to our electoral resilience. Misinformation, disinformation, the electoral system itself are all part of the flaws in the electoral system. Will these issues also be in scope for the Elections Democracy Bill that is coming next year?
Secretary of State.
Well, the terms of reference will be laid in the House of Commons library today, but this is not the only way that we are looking at the security and the integrity of our elections. My colleague, the Minister for Security, is leading the Defending Democracy Task Force, which is looking more widely at action that we may need to take to ensure that our safeguards remain robust to against the changing nature of the threat to our democracy.
Law.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, of course, the appalling crime carried out by Nathan Gill with a £40,000 bribe to speak about Russia is not unique, although the bribe is the one we know. 8 other members of the Reform Party also piloted pro-Russian narratives, sometimes line by line, word by word. The 2 questions I wish to ask is, given the timelines at the end of March, if there are parts of which are not robust in our elections, are you going to bring about legislation before May? And secondly, given that loopholes are already being exploited, particularly on monies entering this country, will you be applying retrospectively?
Secretary of State.
I can't anticipate what's going to be in the review, so we have to give Philip Rycroft and his team time to make their recommendations, and then we will consider them and the level of the threats that he may identify that we're as yet unaware of. I can't comment on individual cases. I'm sure he will understand. That will be a matter for the police, and if there are further prosecutions to be made, then I'm sure the police will carry that forward.
Calvin Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Russia is attacking every aspect of our state. It is attacking our industries, it is attacking our infrastructure, and it is attacking our way of life. And, as we have seen in the treacherous actions of a Reform politician outside of this place, it is attacking the underpinning democracy that holds us together. Whilst I welcome the steps and the leadership that the Secretary of State has announced, this must be a wake-up call across government. Can the Secretary of State set out what steps he is taking to encourage similarly strong approaches and leadership to countering Russian malign activity from other government departments?
Well, I mean, he's absolutely right. It is a cornerstone of Russia's international strategy to threaten the national security and the integrity of democracies, the UK and our partners overseas. We know that. What we are seeking to check is that our safeguards against that evolving threat are sufficiently robust to keep our democracy safe. This will be an approach that will be supported by departments right across government. The Security Minister is leading the Defending Democracy Task Force, and he's already published the Counter-Political Interference and Espionage Action Plan, which calls on ministers right across government to collaborate together to ensure that we are making the safeguards he's calling for sufficiently robust.
Andrew George.
Deputy Speaker, although it may seem a little tangential, I wonder whether the following could be in scope for this investigation. And that is the way in which those people in this country, hundreds of thousands, who work for 20, 30, 40 years paying taxes in this country are unable to influence the outcomes of elections because they have an EU passport, whereas there are hundreds of thousands of expats who never set foot in this country for decades and decades, and yet they have an influence on the outcome of elections, and indeed unscrupulous parties could hoover them up and direct them towards marginal seats, thus influencing the outcome of the election itself. So would the Secretary of State, either with this or with the electoral bill, please address this issue?
Well, he makes his point clearly and eloquently, but he's right. It is somewhat tangential to the review that Philip Rycroft will be leading. That would be looking at malign foreign financial interference, but he should be reassured that no stone will be left unturned in seeking to protect our democracy. It's one of the most precious things we have.
Mahinda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can my right honourable friend give a clear assurance to my constituents of Portsmouth North that the police have all the resources they need to pursue all remaining leads in the Gill case? And, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this review will examine the full extent of Russian interference in our country's politics and democracy, including any influence exerted through government contracts or strategic infrastructure projects.
She makes a very important point, and yes, of course, the police have the resources they require to pursue any lines of inquiry arising from associates of Nathan Gill, but not only that case, and not only in that political party. It's very important that the independent inquiry that we're launching today operates cross-party in the interests of our democracy and everybody who holds that democracy as dear as I'm sure all members across the House do.
Speaker, those of us who have been targeted by Russia, and there are a number of us in this chamber, will have been particularly horrified by the crimes of the former Reform leader in Wales. I have to say I'm particularly pleased to see Philip Rycroft being appointed. We know he's been a fine public servant. We also know his deep experience of Europe and also Northern Ireland. And to that extent, can he absolutely assure us that the EU referendum will absolutely be in scope? I think I'm getting heckled by Reform. Today of all days, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Well, as I said earlier, we're not seeking to relitigate the past. There has been no evidence that the outcome of any previous election or referendum was affected by any attempted foreign interference. We're seeking to make sure that the safeguards we have in place against any threats to our democracy from malign foreign actors seeking to use finance to influence voters' choices in those elections and the outcomes of those elections are robust enough to keep us safe. I welcome his support for Philip Rycroft's appointments. For me, one of the important aspects of his appointment is he has no party political affiliation whatsoever.
Paul Wall.
Madam Deputy Speaker, some in Reform have suggested that their former leader in Wales, the traitor Nathan Gill, and he was a traitor, was just one bad apple Yet, however, we've learned in recent weeks that there are at least 8 MEPs that used to represent either UKIP or the Brexit Party that were approached by Gill at the behest of his Russian paymasters. What is it about parties led by the former member of honourable member for Clacton that makes them uniquely susceptible to Russian bribes? And could it be that they're already the apologists for Putin?
Before I call the Secretary of State, can I entreat the honourable member? I'm sure he'll have mentioned it to the honourable member for Clacton that he was going to reference him in the House. I think you'll find that you use the term the honourable member for Clacton. If you wish to argue, back to the chair. Secretary of State.
Thank you. Well, I won't be tempted to comment on any individual cases. What we're seeking to do is to ensure that safeguards against foreign financial interference in the round are sufficiently robust.
Speaker, I warmly welcome the review announced today by the Secretary of State, and he's right to talk about the importance of upholding the integrity of our democracy. But it's not just about malign foreign interference, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's also about things that are said in this place. One of the greatest threats to our democracy is the willful spreading of misinformation by prominent politicians. But the Secretary of State is not without fault in this regard, Madam Deputy Speaker. He repeatedly, incorrectly, claimed that Scotland's water quality is lower than England's. In fact, it is significantly higher, something I pointed out during a debate and a point of order in this chamber. So even when the Secretary of State, when this was pointed out by the Statistics Authority, he refused to apologise. Will he take the opportunity now, in light of the fact that our conduct and social media posts are now within scope of the review?
Well, I know he didn't like the facts when I made them clear in this House, but the review is about malign foreign financial interference in our democracy, not points that he doesn't like.
Alex Barros-Curtis.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my right honourable friend for announcing this review, which I fully welcome. Does he agree with me that every political party should welcome it, unless they've got something to hide? Yeah. And will he tell me also whether the terms of reference of Philip Rycroft's independent investigation will require every political party to cooperate? And if they don't, will he name and shame them so that the public can render their judgment accordingly?
I thank you for his question. The review will not have the powers to compel people to submit evidence. But like him, my view is that members from every single political party represented in this House will want to ensure that the Russian state is not using dirty money to influence and interfere in our democratic processes. I would be shocked if any political party doesn't subscribe to that view, because it's what underpins the freedom of our democracy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd just like to start by saying I'm really disappointed that none of the Reform MPs who were here at the start, most have gone now, took the opportunity to utterly condemn Nathan Gill's treacherous acts. Absolutely, we should all be condemning what he did. He's an absolute traitor to our country. But I'm pleased that the Secretary of State has taken seriously his duties to build and protect faith in our democracy. So you'll be pleased to hear I've recently visited a few high schools in my constituency, Forrester, Firhill, Tynecastle, Boroughmuir and Balerno, to talk about our democracy and talk about opportunities for them to actually come here to see it actually at work. The three most common topics they want to talk about is bobbing. I give them a demonstration, of course. The second is smartphone bans that may or may not be coming towards them. But the third is our electoral system, proportional representation. Now, so I know the Secretary of State takes seriously his role in protecting our democracy and modernising it. So will he listen to our young people when doing so?
Well, I'm congratulating on bringing young people into this House. It's very important that young people get to see their democracy in action. I'm sure they, like all of us who are older, want to get dirty money out of British politics, and that is what this review is intended to achieve.
Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a member of the Fair Elections APPG, I very much welcome the independent review into foreign financial interference into our democracy. So does the Secretary of State share my concern about the inadequate oversight of potentially foreign donations, particularly monies funnelled through cryptocurrency, and the potential for malign actors to seek to influence our democracy through crypto donations?
She makes a very important point. Cryptocurrency is one of the routes by which dirty money is able to covertly enter British politics in an attempt to influence the outcomes of elections. That is why crypto will be in scope for this review, and I look forward, as I know she does, to the findings of Philip Rycroft's review.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A once senior leader of the Reform Party is now in jail for colluding with Russia.
Yeah.
And when the honourable member for Clacton heard about this, did he launch an inquiry? Did he perhaps review his own previous statements on Russia, including saying that he admired Putin? No, he did not. He called Nathan Gill a bad apple. So I welcome this review. I welcome the fact that all political parties will be invited to contribute. But can I press my right honourable friend to commit to making it clear to this House, when he comes back and reports on the findings of this review, exactly which political parties took part in this exercise of scrutiny and transparency and which do not?
Can I just confirm with the honourable member that he did inform the honourable member for Clacton?
I'm pleased to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I did. He's not in his place to hear my comments, but I hope he's listening anyway.
It will be for Philip Rycroft to publish his review in the way that he sees fit, but my honourable friend is absolutely right. The sentencing of Nathan Gill for bribery, alongside other recent cases, has exposed vulnerabilities and weaknesses in the UK's political and electoral systems. And the review will give us the opportunity to check that our safeguards are sufficiently robust given the evolving nature of the threat.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I, like others, thank the Secretary of State for his robust defence of elections and our democracy through his statement. On the Gill case, he may be aware that the Reform Board member Gawain Towler is on record as saying that he realised very quickly that Nathan Gill was raising pro-Russia questions about Ukraine in 2018, but after confronting Gill, he then simply, quote, accepted his explanation at face value and was, by his own admission, foolish. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that it can't be good enough for any political party to simply accept peddling of pro-Russian propaganda, and can he assure me that this review will examine all and every link with Russia without fear or favour?
Absolutely, the review will operate without fear or favour. It will involve an in-depth assessment of the current financial and bribery-related rules and safeguards that regulate all political parties and political finance, so we can ensure our democracy remains safe in the decades to come.
Last but by no means least, Chris Vince.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for his statement today? This case should be of a concern to anybody who believes in this country and believes in our democracy, which should be everybody in this chamber today. Can I ask the Secretary of State what he will do to ensure, and working with the Home Secretary, that police forces like mine in Essex, which cover my constituency of Harlow, are equipped to deal with any local investigations should the need arise?
Well, I have by my side the Security Minister who chairs the Defending Democracy Task Force. He's, of course, located in the Home Office, and I'm sure he'll have heard the Honourable Gentleman's comments. But I agree with him. Our democracy is too precious to allow dirty money from overseas to destroy it. And I hope the whole House will come together to do what is necessary to protect something as vital and precious as our freedom to choose our own governments.
Can I thank the Secretary of State for his statement this afternoon? I will allow a few moments for the front benches to swap over. And can I urge all members who are leaving the chamber to do so quickly and quietly?